Coming up on Network Africa, the death toll rises to 89 as Cyclone Idai batters Zimbabwe. A train crash in the Democratic Republic of Congo leaves 24 people dead. Ethiopia says the flight data from the Ethiopian Airlines crash a week ago suggests clear similarities with the Indonesian crash last October. And a warm welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shoboele. We begin this week with stories and happenings that made headlines over the weekend.
Next up.
Pupils from 2 boarding schools are said to be among 31 people who were killed in eastern Zimbabwe by Cyclone Idai. Officials say they were asleep in their dormitory when rocks swept down the mountain and knocked over a wall. 3 people are missing after a bus was washed away when the driver tried to cross a flooded river. The tropical storm cut off power and communications in Manicaland province along the border with Mozambique, where about 21 people have died. The cyclone made a landfall in Mozambique on Thursday with winds up to 177 kilometers per hour. It cut off more than 500,000 residents in the port city of Beira. Ethiopian Airlines offered the relatives of 157 victims of Boeing 737 MAX plane crash bags of scorched earth to bury in place of their loved ones. Families have been told it could take up to 6 months to identify remains. Countries around the world grounded the 737 MAX 8 and 9 aircraft after Flight 302 crashed on 10th of March. Ethiopia's Transport Minister, Dagmawit Moges, says the flight data from the crashed Ethiopian Airlines plane suggests clear similarities with the crash of Indonesia last October and will be a subject of further study. Several hundred protesters of Algerian origin gathered in Paris on Sunday to demand a political change at home, saying the mafia, which had plundered and ruled the country for 60 years, had to resign. The demonstrators in Place de la République Square, some of them wrapped in Algerian flags, sang songs around and on top of the Mariana statue, symbol of the French Republic. Sunday's demonstration in Paris coincided with reports from the state news agency in Algiers that the newly appointed Prime Minister has started talks to form a new government in a move designed to appease protesters demanding President Abdelaziz Bouteflika and his inner circle to resign. However, many say the Prime Minister is unlikely to diffuse anger on the streets by kicking off talks on a new administration.
More updates from Zimbabwe now, where the death toll has risen to at least 89 people as Cyclone Idai tears through the country. A government official says the disaster has created a humanitarian crisis in the nation, struggling with an economic crisis and a drought. The scale of destruction is only becoming apparent as rescuers reach the most affected areas near the border with Mozambique. Local officials says the body count is expected to rise. The United Nations says more than 100 people have died in weeks of heavy rain and flooding in Mozambique Mozambique and Malawi, where villages were left underwater. Meanwhile, local media is reporting that South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has deployed soldiers to assist in recovery operations in neighboring Mozambique. The storm has also affected electricity supplies to South Africa after it damaged a transmission line in Mozambique, cutting supplies by 900 megawatts and worsening an already strained electricity supply in the country. Mr. Ramaphosa said that the power supply would be restored within days because the South African National Defence Force is helping the country's electricity provider, Eskom. Let's get more on this story now from George Msamba, who is the acting assignment editor at Star FM Harare. George, thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much, Teniola. It's good to be with you.
Yeah. So how bad is the situation in Zimbabwe after Cyclone Idai?
The situation is very dire in Manicaland, which is a huge province. Mashingo, it's a huge province. They've all been affected. We are getting feedback now as rescuers and relief workers are managing to get into these areas. They were not passable, the roads and bridges were swept away, but now we are beginning to get an insight into how much damage has been done by Cyclone Idai. We know that in Manicaland, I know that you mentioned it in one of your headlines about the school students who had to walk 15 kilometers carrying the dead bodies of their colleagues who had been crushed by a boulder which rolled from a mountain and crashed their dining hall and killing 2 pupils and 1 security guard. And they had to walk for 15 kilometers before they were rescued by the army, who then drove them to a provincial hospital, a district hospital within that area. But they had to walk for a horrific 15 kilometers. Relief work is now managed, the army has now managed to sort out some of the roads and bridges which had been swept away. They've created bypasses so that rescue work can go on. We will probably, I know that the figure, official figure is 89 now, but we expect that there will be more as the rescuers go into some of these isolated villages which have been marooned. Teniola.
Well, George, the cyclone had been expected, but as with all natural disasters, the destruction can never be predicted before. Was there anything that could have been done to have avoided this high number of casualties?
There is a debate right now to say could more have been done. But our civil protection unit, it is not the parliament budget. When it is given a budget, it is given very little money. And so one can expect that maybe they didn't do enough awareness activities to tell the villagers within that whole area, which is supposed to have been affected, to say, look, move. But I also understand that maybe some of the villagers were reluctant to move because we have had a drought here, and probably they felt that there could never be any rains which would come with that much magnitude. Some of the areas have experienced this for the first time, and so the people might not have been reluctant to move because they didn't expect that it would be so heavy, the rains would be so heavy, the winds would be so heavy. But it is a debate that we are having here in the country to say how much could have been done before to make sure that more lives could have been saved. And this is the debate that will probably carry out after the activities of rescuing those who are still marooned, those who are still in trouble, those who are still starving are helped. This is something that we will, as media and as parliament and as citizens of Zimbabwe, are going to debate. How much are we giving to the civil protection unit for such events and such disasters such as this one?
George Msamba, thank you so much for joining us on Network Africa and giving us an update on that story. Do stay safe in Zimbabwe.